Hi guys, so when dealing with a pandemic like this one, it's extremely important that countries work together. The problem in the UK is that you have different administrations imposing different levels of restrictions. I personally would like to see stricter rules being applied, but then so would the scientists. The ERG types within Boris Johnson's party would like to see minimal or zero restrictions, and we've seen how this has manifested over the last year. This problem was explained perfectly by Professor Andrew Watterson at the University of Stirling, where he schools a BBC reporter on compliance. Let's hear what he had to say.
Let's speak now to Andrew Watterson, a professor in public health at the University of Stirling. What do you make of the government's approach?
The government in England, do you mean?
Yes, the Westminster government, as far as the restrictions are concerned for England.
Okay. They really are out of step. If we're looking at evidence about transmission, which is clearly what Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland did, they've come to very different conclusions about what the risks are and about what the figures are telling us. England has the highest 7-day positivity rate just before Christmas across the whole of the UK. And therefore one would have expected a more precautionary and preventative approach. But that's not what we have seen. So I think there's a real mismatch between what some of the data are telling us at the moment about transmission and what is happening in terms of policy and prevention.
And on that point about the divergence in approach between the four nations of the United Kingdom, in terms of public health messaging and compliance, how much of an impact does it have if people, say, in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland look at England and say, well, hang on, they're not having the same limitations and restrictions. Does it affect compliance and the way the restrictions are followed in those parts of the UK?
What a ridiculous question to ask. Does he truly believe that people in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales are looking at England and saying, look, they have massive numbers of new cases, we should be like them? Well, obviously some people are, but generally it's the other way around. People in England are saying, we're having a massive number of cases. Why aren't we imposing restrictions like Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are doing? What a ridiculous question. But then we're going to hear the answer to that.
I think there are issues that may operate both ways as well, because people in England may say, well, why in the other three countries are they taking these actions? But mixed messaging, I think, is a really big issue. And what we've heard from the government in England is that, well, be careful and open a few windows. Well, that's not very good messaging, as opposed to meet in these sorts of numbers, stay that far apart, wear masks and so on. So I think there's a real problem across the UK now about muddled messaging, primarily created, I think, in England.
Why? Because Boris Johnson is afraid of his backbenchers. Boris Johnson has had to rely on the Labour Party to get policies through, to get restrictions through, because there is a growing rebellion within the Conservative Party against more restrictions. And the media are also turning against the government when it comes to imposing new restrictions. Cases are rising. Other parts of the UK are imposing restrictions, and England is not, because of the likes of the ERG. Boris Johnson is no longer listening to the scientists, it seems, and he seems to prefer to listen to the likes of Brexit Hardman Steve Baker or Desmond Swain or someone like that. It's a real case of the tail wagging the dog here. These are people who are not in power, but they're controlling the government, in a sense. They're dictating policy. Boris Johnson, it seems, no longer wants to listen to scientists, and he wants to listen to politicians. And that's why it appears you have different restrictions in England and in Wales, England and Scotland, England and Northern Ireland. When is it going to change? Perhaps when Boris Johnson is eventually removed. But until then, I think he's going to listen to the likes of the ERG and toe this line between protecting public health and protecting his position. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.